You're listening to Trueheart. Amy and Scott Mallon dive deep with celebrities, mavericks, visionaries, and real-life heroes to find out what sets their souls on fire. Here's Amy and Scott.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Trueheart. We have another great episode for you. Before we get into it, you can subscribe wherever podcasts are found. And if you'd like to watch the show, you can always find us on YouTube and subscribe there. And if you love the show, please leave us a great review and a 5-star rating. We would really appreciate it.
And we want to tell you about something really cool that we just launched. We've teamed up with actor and recording artist Laura Marano, who has an awesome new Netflix movie, The Royal Treatment, coming out on January 20th. And our friends at Shine the Light On for the hashtag Art Heals campaign, which benefits the charity, the Sasha Project LA. Laura has designed a really cool limited edition apparel collection, and 100% of the net proceeds will help the Sasha Project LA provide art therapy for patients at Children's Hospital Los Angeles.
That's amazing.
You can get this amazing gear in time for Valentine's Day for you and the ones you love at shinethelighton.com/Laura. That's shinethelighton.com/Laura. And here she is to tell you a little bit more about it.
Oh, hey there. What's this adorable hoodie, you ask? Well, I have partnered with my friends at Shine the Light On to release a special limited edition apparel collection. And I have based the design on a phrase you guys have seen me say a lot, sending so much love. And we got options. We got a hat, we got a hoodie, we got a t-shirt. But here's the thing. We only made a limited amount, and once they sell out, you won't be able to get them anywhere else. So go to shinethelighton.com/Laura right away before they are all gone. Best part, 100% of the net proceeds go to a charity called the Sasha Project LA. This is my friend Sasha. She is 13 years old and has cerebral palsy. She likes art, fashion, and helping kids like her. So she created her own charity that provides art therapy to kids at Children's Hospital Los Angeles. So go to shinethelighton.com/Laura right now before everything sells out. You'll be in fabulous gear and helping a great cause.
On today's episode, we'll be discussing the topics of human trafficking and sexual abuse. I want to provide a trigger warning. So if anyone has experience as a survivor of these issues, and this conversation brings up feelings that you need help to process and deal with, there are resources available to you. The National Sexual Assault Hotline provides 24/7 confidential support. You can reach them at 1-800-656-HOPE. That's 1-800-656-4673.
This is a story about how a dress has changed my life and tens of thousands of lives around the world.
Human trafficking is absolutely happening in every country of the world.
We're doing something that's a little bit silly to really fight something that's anything but silly.
We couldn't believe everything people were doing in a dress. We were changing lives with a simple change of clothes.
I'm seeing my idea outgrow me to the point that I am running to keep up with it, that I can't dream big enough, and I'm inviting others to dream bigger with me.
None of us choose where we're born, but we can choose what we do with our life. This is something we can absolutely solve in our lifetime. My name is Blythe Hill, and I'm the CEO and founder of Dressember Foundation.
We're honored to welcome Blythe Hill to the show. Blythe Hill is the CEO and founder of the Dressember Foundation, an anti-trafficking nonprofit organization. Through their annual campaign, thousands of people across the world commit to wearing dresses or ties for the month of December as a way to raise awareness and funding for anti-trafficking work. Since 2013, Dressember advocates have raised $15 million and resourced dozens of anti-trafficking programs across the US and the world. Dressember has received press attention from the likes of Forbes, Glamour, InStyle, Good Housekeeping, Cosmopolitan, The Today Show, among others. In 2019, Blythe was named one of InStyle's 50 Badass Women, alongside powerhouse ladies like Michelle Obama, Christine Blasey Ford, Angela Davis, and Gayle King. Let's get into it with Blythe. Blythe Hill, founder of Dressember Foundation. We are so honored to have you on the Trueheart podcast and to get to know you and learn more about the wonderful work and impact that your organization is making.
Well, thank you. I'm really excited to be here and grateful for the chance to share about our work.
Well, I wanted to start by saying I was so moved by your Dressember documentary. And before we get into why, I want to touch on one of the things that I discovered we both have in common, which is our love for clever names. So I thought Quilty as Charged and the Necklet were just brilliant ideas. Scott can tell you one of my favorite kind of hobbies is to come up with catchy names. And especially if I can work in a double entendre, then holy smokes, I'm really excited. So I'm also
true.
like,
she gets her hooks into a saying, she drives it into the ground.
Oh yeah. I'm like the catchphrase queen.
But they're great. They're usually really good.
Thank you.
The first day.
It was, yeah, I guess after you've heard them 1,000 times, it gets a little much. Some of my signature sayings are starting to catch on with Scott and our children, which makes my day. But I'm just curious, Blythe, with your love of puns, how is that bringing joy into your life these days?
Oh, that's such a fun question. Yeah, I am someone who needs a creative outlet. And so whether it's crafting or baking, language, I think is just such a great opportunity to be creative. And I love that language is this like dynamic, ever-changing thing, like, that we're adding new words to the dictionary literally every year. So anytime I can sort of like workshop puns at home, much like you're doing, it's just fun for me. It's just delightful because sometimes it can feel like there's nothing left or like, everything's already been done. But I think puns and language are proof that like, no, there is a chance there's a chance for newness and an opportunity to create something brand new. And that's a really exciting, energizing possibility.
I love that. And after the last almost 2 years that we've had with the pandemic, I feel like you need to find the joy in these tiny moments. Like you got to take it wherever you can get it. So if it's a pun that you're craving and that's working for you, that's beautiful.
Definitely.
Well, tell us about the Dressember Style Challenge and how that grew into the incredible nonprofit that you've started.
Yeah, so Dressember is a month-long style challenge where men and women take on the creative challenge of wearing either a dress or a tie every day during the month of December. So it started with dresses in December, Dressember, speaking of puns, and that expanded within a couple years to include ties. And it's very much like a choose your own adventure. Anyone can wear anything, we have women wear ties. I wore a tie last year for the first time every day in December, super fun. And we have men wearing dresses either because it's what they're more comfortable wearing or for sort of the like impact, the shock value, I guess, of getting donations. So initially it was just a style challenge, just a thing fun, quirky I came up with while I was in college, where I really was seeking a creative outlet in the midst of this like rigorous academic routine that I found myself locked into. And after a couple years of it just being this like fun, lighthearted challenge, I thought, I wonder if there is potential for more here. Like people seem to really like this. This is growing beyond just my immediate circle. I had like my friends doing it, their friends doing it. Like, it was moving beyond people who knew me personally, and not a lot of my ideas get that far. And so I noticed like, okay, this one is moving. People like this. People are joining in. And so I wonder if there's a chance to add a layer here, like a layer of impact and a cause. And this was around 2011 that I was thinking this through. So I started in 2009. And then
2011, I started thinking about like what more it could be. And pretty much from 2005 on, like, so in 2005, I learned about the issue of human trafficking and was just stopped in my tracks. Like, could not believe that labor trafficking is happening, sex trafficking is happening. Couldn't believe that, what some people call modern day slavery, like, oh, this is alive and well. This is a profitable, thriving criminal industry. I felt this sense of like, I've got to do something about this, like in a way and to a degree that I had never felt before about any other issue. And so hearing about it in 2005 as a college student, as much as much passion as I felt and as much urgency as I felt, I also felt like, well, what can I possibly do about this? Like, I'm not qualified. I don't have significant resources to give. And so it felt I just felt this tension and frustration of feeling so passionate, but so powerless. And so then when Dressember, my quirky style challenge, was growing, and I thought about aligning it with a cause, it was a very easy decision for me to choose to align it with anti-human trafficking because I had been so passionate about it for so many years and looking for a way to take tangible action. And so in 2013, I aligned Dressember with the cause of anti-trafficking and hoped, like the goal that I set felt huge. It felt ambitious. But I said, we're going to try to raise $25,000 and, let's see, let's go. And again, thought like, this could totally flop. I could end up looking really dumb. But I kept coming back to like, well, this could be my opportunity to engage in this work. And if I can help even one person, then it's worth looking like a fool to 1,000 people. And so we went for it and ended up hitting my crazy huge goal on day 3, and then proceeded to raise $165,000 in that month. And it was after that Dressember as an organization was born, where I was like, oh, this is a much better idea than I realized, and I need to set this up for success, and took steps to file for 501c3 and slowly build an organization. And really it's snowballed since then, because we raised $465,000 the second year, and then $925,000, and then $1.5 million. And long story short, we are a few weeks from wrapping up the 2021 campaign, and to date we have raised over $15 million towards anti-trafficking programs across the US and across the world.
That's unbelievable. And first of all, congratulations.
Incredible.
Yeah. And, a common theme that we've seen, some of the amazing people who've graced our show, and you certainly fall within this category. It's just so interesting, the idea of when you have an idea and you think, oh, this is just something I'm kicking around in my head. And then you put it out there. And then you say, well, I want to make a change. This is something that really matters to me, and I think it matters to other people. To go from just idea to execution and to be really successful with it is something that I think, beyond the fact that what you're doing is so inspirational and important and, necessary, I think just the basic idea of you doing something as one person and the ripple effect it can have to thousands, tens of thousands, and millions of other people, I think is so powerful. And, for people out there who are listening to this, everybody has ideas. Everybody thinks, oh gosh, I wish I could do this. Here's another amazing example of somebody who just thought, I could do this. And look at what you've done. I just, I bow down to your perseverance and your creativity. And, I just hope it inspires people to realize you can do great things too.
Yeah, thank you. And I hope it inspires people too. I think, ideas are really powerful things. And I always joke, like, I have a lot of bad ideas that never go anywhere, but I think having ideas for the sake of ideas is a really life-giving and important thing to engage in. And I look back and I remember saying over and over those first few years, like, I'm 51% excited and 49% terrified. So it's like just enough more excitement than fear. But I think a lot of times it's the fear that holds me back, it holds us as people back, where whether it's like the fear of failure, the fear of looking dumb, whatever it is. In this case, I really had to decide, like, is this important enough to risk my ego, my pride, my reputation, my comfort even. Like, I had to be willing to ask for a lot of help of people and not really have anything to give them in return initially. It was like, will you be part of serving this mission with me? And being ready to hear no if people just didn't have the time or the shared passion. And so, yeah, I think we really, at a certain point, it's like you have to decide, is it more important that I serve this idea than my own comfort and pride and all the other things that I mentioned? And if it is, then you have to go for it.
Absolutely agree. And on a personal level, Blythe, I'm deeply grateful for the work that you and your team have been doing, raising $15 million to fund vital anti-trafficking work around the world is absolutely incredible. I was trafficked as a young woman, and it took me over a decade to realize and accept that there was a point in my life when I was considered by someone to be their property. And I was sold and forced to do horrible things that will be forever burned in my brain under the threat of violence, not just against me, but against two of the people that I loved more than anything in the universe. And I've done a lot of speaking on this issue, and I'm always shocked and saddened that there's this shame and blame culture around survivors of trafficking. And there's this dangerous misconception that this is somehow like an alternative lifestyle that people willingly sign up for, which couldn't be farther from the truth. So I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And that's how my nightmare began. And I'm beyond blessed that I survived. And now I'm in a place on my journey of healing where my past doesn't get to ruin my present and destroy my future. And I can, appreciate the lessons that I've learned from one of the most difficult experiences of my life, and hopefully inspire and empower other people who've been in similar situations. So I'm sure through your amazing work, Blythe, you have so many stories of survivors who have touched your life. I'm curious if there's one or two that stand out that you could share with us.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and thank you, Amy. I appreciate it. Anytime someone shares even a piece of their story, it's just such a gift. So no matter how many times you've shared it, I just appreciate that you would share it
Thank you.
now. And yeah, survivors are some of the strongest people I've ever met. The things that they've endured and overcome, and everyone has a right to talk or not talk about their story in whatever way that they choose to. And so, like I said, it's a gift when someone chooses to share their story. And I can think of so many people who've inspired me, who have lived experience in this. And the ones that stand out in this moment, I can think of a girl that I met on a trip to India when I was in Mumbai, a girl who had been trafficked as a child, and still was a child when I spoke to her. She was 14, and she had such fire. She was this fiery little 14-year-old. And she actually looked, I mean, she didn't even look 14. She looked 9 or 10. Like she was this little fireball. And we had a translator, of course, but I remember hearing her story, her and her sister being trafficked, and I mean, really being in the wrong place at the wrong time on a train. And then she was part of, I mean, so she was able to get out of the situation. And then she also worked with our partner in India to go back to where, like, she showed them, like, we need to go back because there are more girls where I was. And so she kind of led the rescue operation in the brothel that she had been in. And the amount of like gumption that takes, I don't know if gumption's the right word, but it just comes to mind as like when I think of her, just like, okay, it's not enough for me to be out of this horrible situation. Like, we've got to go back. I'll take you back. That strength of spirit to be like, I'll go back. Like, it's worth going back, even though like this was horrible, this was traumatic, but I'm going to go back so that these girls can get out of it too. So having this conversation with her and just being like floored, like knowing the details of this story and seeing again her fire and her strength, and telling her like, this, you're right, like this is awful, no one should have to go through this, it's wrong that this happened to you. And in all parts of the world, but in India especially, the like pervasiveness of misogyny and like valuing sons more than daughters and valuing different caste systems in different ways, and kind of justifying exploiting people because of their gender or their rank in a caste system, agreeing like and stating like, okay, all of these things are wrong and they're evil. And then her saying like, I agree with you. You need to go out to the villages and tell them that, because they're the ones who need to hear this. And feeling this like charge of like, keep doing it and do more. I just like, I continue to think about this girl almost as like this conscience, you know, of like, okay, first and foremost, like, we've got to stop this from happening to anyone. Like, it should not be happening to anyone anywhere in the world. It's not okay. But secondly, like, if or when it does happen, getting those people out of the situation and getting them the support and the resources they need to heal and move forward. I think, like you said, Amy, like, no one's story should hinge on the worst thing that's ever happened to them. And it doesn't have to. And I've experienced that in my own life, that like, as insidious as sexual abuse can be, and I'm sure as trafficking can be, your story doesn't center on that terrible thing or series of terrible things that's happened to you. It doesn't define the trajectory of your life. It doesn't define even your present. It doesn't even define your past ultimately. Like, and that's the sort of healing and restoration that's possible when we really wrap around people who've gone through this kind of trauma with adequate, comprehensive care and services.
Thank you for sharing that story. This girl sounds like a total hero.
Badass warrior.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
tip of the hat too to you for using the word gumption. I'm always a fan of great words like that. So thank you. Here's my question. I was thinking about this while you were, talking, and in America, I think Amy and I know a little bit more about this than the average person, but you think about this stuff going on right here, in our neighborhoods. And one of the things I've always thought of is, these people are like cockroaches that just survive in the dark, and they can survive and even thrive in some circumstances because they've managed to create a web of darkness.
And to clarify, we're talking about the traffickers, the
Yes.
people doing this awful,
Yes, sorry.
perpetuating this awful industry.
Right. I think, it's really important for people to understand, and maybe I'm sure you could speak to this, is, number one, how is this still a thing today? how is it like, with modern, we all like to think of ourselves as modern people and horrified that something like this could still exist. And it's happening, it could be happening a mile or 2 miles or 5 miles from your house. It could be happening next door. You just don't even know it's happening. So how can we start to shine more of a light on this? And what should people be on the lookout for? Because I really feel like the answer, one of the answers, is just having like a neighborhood watch kind of feel. That people need to know about this, number one, and two, be on the lookout. What should they be looking out for to try and you know stop this or report it, or because I think that people, A, don't know it's really happening, and B, they don't know what to look for.
Yeah, such a great question. I think, well, I think back to something you said, Amy, that I think you said it took about 10 years for you to self-identify as a victim of trafficking. And that is from my experience, what I've heard, very common. It's very common that someone who's experienced trafficking will take years to self-identify and use that language, and maybe the language they use before that is domestic violence, or I was in a bad relationship. And so the way we talk about trafficking as a society has a direct impact on how victims, how survivors are viewing their experience and their ability to self-identify and use the language for what happened to them. So as long as we're perpetuating the narrative of like, well, trafficking is like Taken, or it's like, maybe it's not like Taken, but it's primarily immigrants or, non-citizens. It's primarily kidnapping or abduction. Or yeah, if it is kids, people are starting to understand like, oh, it's happening in our backyard, so it can happen to anyone. But then there's sort of the pendulum swings too far of like, oh, so my child is just as vulnerable to being trafficked as any other child. And so I need to be aware, the heightened stranger danger, the abduction, the kidnapping, the locking in a basement, or chaining up somewhere. When we have that narrative that's dominant of like when people think of trafficking, that is actually very harmful, I think, to the overall movement, because statistics tell us, well, the majority of trafficking happens through relationship, like a victim knows their trafficker, whether it's a family member or a friend or neighbor or classmate. They have a relationship with the person that is or will traffic them. And they are not, by and large, locked in captivity. Maybe they are initially, but at a certain point, they are. And so then there's this stigma that we continue as a society to put on victims, which is, if you were free to go, why did you stay? Why didn't you just leave? And we shame victims, and we also dramatically underestimate the strength of trauma bonds and the manipulation and coercion and threats that might be happening. If you have a child and your trafficker is threatening to do harm to your child, I'm a mother. I would do anything to protect my child. And so am I going to stay in a horrible situation if I think it's going to protect my child? Absolutely. So we really underestimate the strength of the bonds that are there, that are like invisible bonds, which I think are actually stronger than the like physical chains that we might be conjuring up. And then we also overlook the fact that, again, the strength of the relationship that a person has to their trafficker. Maybe they rely on them for basic needs. Maybe they're in a relationship with their trafficker. Maybe they think they love their trafficker, or they're married to them, or have a child with them. Like, there's just so many layers of complexity. And there's also, I love what you said about comparing traffickers to cockroaches, because I think, they're not brave, they're opportunists. And so they prey on the people who are most vulnerable. the low hanging fruit. It's a really crude expression, but runaway kids, foster kids, communities of color, low income communities. They're preying on kids and adults who are in positions of existing vulnerability, and then they can identify like, well, what is it that they need, and I can give that to them as sort of a bait and switch to then lock them into this cycle of exploitation that I have in mind.
Exactly to what you're speaking about, Blythe. I've been doing a lot of research lately that there are these so-called orphanages that are anything but, and in communities where families cannot afford to feed themselves, there'll be traffickers that come and offer $100 to $200, which would be like, the equivalent of $1 million for these families, saying, "Hey, I'm going to give your child a better life. Here's some money for the rest of the family. They're going to be taken care of." And it's really all a front to abuse, neglect, and traffic these children. And in doing, this research and kind of going down the rabbit hole online, I was seeing that, a lot of people are saying, beware of this kind of orphanage tourism that goes on, where people say, "Hey, I want to visit these orphanages in third world countries." And a lot of times these kids are not orphans. They have families. They were sold, under this guise of a better life for the other family members. And now they're in the pipeline being trafficked. And it's so evil that these things are going on and these young kids are being stolen in this way. But we have to be alert about this and know that it's going on, so that we're not inadvertently contributing to the problem, and we're not inadvertently funding this industry, which it sounds so awful calling it an industry, but as billions of dollars are being made every year through the sale of people.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with all of that. And I think it makes me think, I think back to the question of what can we do to prevent this. I think being aware, like you said, is so important. And I think in the same way that trafficking happens through relationship by and large, I think prevention also happens and intervention happens at its best relationship. So we're doing a series right now at Dressember that's things survivors wish that you knew about trafficking, and we're working with a group of survivors through ECPAT. And there's a quote that we got from one survivor that's, she said, "I didn't need an elaborate rescue operation. What I needed was for the urgent care staff to notice that it wasn't normal for me to come in 7 times in 1 month. And I needed my teacher to notice that I had gone from a straight A student to barely attending and failing the class. And I needed, I'm forgetting what else she said, but it was like all these examples of relationship and people in her life who could have noticed, like, hey, something's wrong. Your behavior's different. The way you're showing up is different, or like in terms of like hospitalizations or ER staff, urgent care, like seeing some of these red flags and then being able to offer, like, ask questions and offer support directly to an individual. I think, you'll never regret calling the National Human Trafficking Hotline if you suspect something or see signs, but it's always going to be best coming from the person in crisis themselves. So if you're notice someone in your life is like, oh, suddenly this person is like just acting totally different. It's like a number of compounding things that might be happening, right? With their behavior or their appearance or injuries, inexplicable injuries, or, not having total control over their time or money. There's a whole list of them on our website, on Polaris's website, to look through. But if you, I think, primarily looking for it in the people that but then obviously keeping an eye out if you see like a strange situation when you're out.
This Saves Lives is a ridiculously delicious food brand that gives back. Every single purchase sends life-saving food to a child in need. Co-founders Kristen Bell, Ryan Devlin, Todd Grinnell, and Ravi Patel launched This Saves Lives with a simple motto: buy a bar, feed a child, we eat together. Now with more than just bars, their products contain premium ingredients and are non-GMO, gluten-free, and kosher dairy. Their unique line of kids products all contain one full serving of fruits and vegetables and are safe for school. To buy their ridiculously delicious snacks, head on over to thisSavesLives.com.
Are you still wiping your butt with all that toilet paper you hoarded last year? How's that going for you? Let me introduce you to a new way to clean after you handle your business. Meet Hello Tushy. Tushy is the modern bidet that easily clips to any toilet and installs in just 10 minutes. Starting at just $99, Tushy sprays a precise stream of clean water and washes away all of that literal crap that toilet paper leaves behind. Upgrade your bathroom experience by going to HelloTushy, TUSHY.com. That's HelloTushy.com. Tushy saves the environment and reduces your carbon butt print. Tushy saves you money on toilet paper, and Tushy saves your butt. Go to Hello Tushy, that's TUSHY.com. Stop wiping, start washing with Tushy. For over a decade, lifestyle brand Half United has been using fashion to feed people all over the world. To break the cycle of generational poverty, the community provides gainful employment to local artisans in vulnerable communities who create their handmade and sustainable products. For every Half United product purchased, 7 meals are given to a child in need. Half United has donated over 1 million meals to date. Shop their beautiful jewelry, teas, handbags, and home accessories at halfunited.com and help fight global hunger.
Say ciao to tradition and hello to your new favorite plant-based Italian bistro in Los Angeles, Brothers Meatballs. Brothers Meatballs was founded by brothers and food industry veterans Mauro and Sergio Corbia, who hail from the Isle of Sardinia, Italy. When they joined forces with second-generation Italian chef Mark Middleman, their self-proclaimed brother from another mother, the concept for Brothers Meatballs was born. Mauro was the founder and creator of Mauro's Cafe inside Fred Siegel, a long-standing LA hotspot. Dissatisfied with the amount of plant-based dining options reminiscent of the home-cooked meals their mother once made, the brothers were determined to create a menu so delicious it would appeal to herbivores and omnivores alike. Inspired by the food Mama so lovingly prepared for Sunday suppers, these meatballs are a modern take on a family classic. All menu items are 100% plant-based and made with Mama's secret ingredient, love. Angelinos can order lunch and dinner Wednesday through Sunday at brothersmeatballs.com. You probably saw this. Grey's Anatomy is one of my favorite shows, but last season they did a whole storyline on trafficking, and I called my friend Jason George, who's on the show. He plays Dr. Ben Warren, after, because I was so emotional that this massive show gave this important issue the airtime, and in the way that it was written. Giacomo Giannotti, who played Dr. DeLuca, who was the one that spotted the red flags and warning signs and thought there was something off about his patient. And when everyone told him that he was crazy and it wasn't a dangerous situation, like, he just did not give up on this girl in the show. And he kept pursuing it and he saved her. And it meant so much to me that we can bring this conversation into the spotlight where it belongs, and we can show people, watching this popular like nighttime soap on ABC, like, this is a real issue. Like, lives are at stake, and you could be, as you said, Blythe, a doctor or nurse in a hospital, and someone can walk in like they did on this Grey's Anatomy episode, and they could be a victim of trafficking. And because you're paying attention and you're really tuned into what's going on with them, you can spot those warning signs and you can save their life. And so I think it's about removing the stigma and not being afraid to have these tough conversations, because as Scott said before, it's thriving in the darkness. But when we shine a massive spotlight on it, it means that people can't get away with doing this. There's an opportunity for us to put an end to this in our lifetimes and to actually make the world a safer place for our children. And I think we can do it if people care enough to get involved.
I think it boils down to, and I think you guys have gotten to the heart of it, which is number one, people need to know this is happening. It's going on all around them all the time. So you need to know it's happening. And number two, you need to get out of your own head and your own sob story of your own life and, ego, and pay attention. Because one thing that I found is that people are blissfully oblivious most of the time about anything that's going on around them. I could tell you stories of things. It's crazy. Like, people just don't notice stuff. And that's what this is about. I think the biggest takeaway for me is just pay attention, and then have the guts to ask a question, because you never know what the answer will be. And you never know what that might mean to the other person, and that you might be changing someone's life or saving someone's life, and the ripple effect that can have. So, the things that you have done are extraordinary, but they're on a bigger scale. And I think, for people listening, it's about that. Just pay attention, and on a one-on-one basis, you can also have a dramatic impact. Even if you help one person, that's a life-changing thing for you and for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Switching gears for a moment, Blythe, in the documentary, you open up and share a bit about your experience of being a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. And my heart is with you, and I empathize as a fellow survivor of abuse as well. I wanted to, say that when you said, I am taking a stand for little Blythe, I just got chills up and down my body, because it really made me feel like every time when I share my story, I'm healing little Amy's trauma. And there's so much power in that, to be able to go back and say, it's not your fault.
Yeah.
You didn't do anything wrong. You are love, you are worthy, you are enough. Like, none of this had anything to do with you. It's somebody else's trauma, because hurt people is what I've discovered. But I'm wondering, because now you have this amazing, beautiful life and you're helping other people, what have been some of the tools in your toolbox on your journey of healing that have helped you? And obviously understanding that, healing is not a one size fits all model, but perhaps there are things that you've done that might work for some of the people that are listening.
Yeah, I think for me, counseling and therapy have been super critical. And in an ongoing capacity, really. I think when I started my therapy journey in my early 20s, I thought, like, okay, I'll be in here a few times, or even a year or so, to kind of work through this. And then I think when you're young, you have this idea of like, and then, then I'll be over it, or then I'll, just be able to move past this. And, I think when you experience trauma, especially as a child, it just, it's formational in a really strange way, and just has ripple effects throughout the rest of your life. And so I'm not ashamed of it. I'm like a lifer with counseling. I think counseling is the best thing since sliced bread, anytime you can really investigate how you're feeling, how something that's happened in your life, good or bad, has reverberated into past memories. There's just so many layers that a good counselor can kind of help excavate. And on that note, like, finding a good counselor is important. And I think doing it when you have enough health and energy to put in the investment. Because if you wait until you need a counselor, it's so exhausting thinking about finding one, that I think it's better to find one when you actually feel like you're in a good place. And so, counseling relationship is like any relationship, where some you're going to click with and some you might not. And so really finding someone, that you can connect with, and feel safe with, is really important. And then also medication. I mean, for me personally, medication has been a really helpful tool in my toolbox as well. I kind of, I'm very open about my like lifetime journey with depression. And so at this point, I'm pretty sure I have dysthymia, which is like a chronic low grade depression. And so having the medication and counseling piece, working in tandem, have been really important. And now, being like 15 years into a counseling journey, with a few different counselors, I have been able to pick up different tools along the way that I just didn't have access to before that. Where, until counseling, or until some form of growth, we really are limited to the tools that are given to us from our parents or caregivers. And in my case, those are pretty limited resources, like in terms of like empathy and grief and self-care and access to processing negative emotions. So, yeah, counseling like has been number one, and I'm just a huge advocate for it. And then there's small things like, eating well, or not small things, these are important things, but eating well and drinking plenty of water, and trying to move my body every day, and just being aware of my mindset on a daily basis. Those are all really important things that are helpful in my ongoing healing journey.
Those are great tips, Blythe. And
Thank
I'm
you for
so
sharing.
glad that you found something that works for you and have the tools to make every day a great day. And we always want people to know that that's accessible to everybody. You get to wake up and make that choice to be happy. And, once you're able to, I think, manage the invisible wounds of your trauma, then you can get to the point where you realize, as I said earlier, that your past does not get to define your present and destroy your future. And you don't have to give those events of the past this weight and this power to them that becomes all consuming. And I've struggled with depression as well as a result of my trauma. And I don't know if this was the case for you, Blythe, but we were actually talking about this on another episode about mental health recently, that during, COVID, when I didn't have some of my tools accessible to me, hot yoga being like one of my best tools that has really been transformative for my trauma issues. I just found myself like crying in the closet, crying in the shower. Like I didn't want to upset, our son, who was already kind of stressed to the brink of what the pandemic had done, keeping him isolated from everyone in our lives. So I just felt like, oh my gosh, I'd done so much good work on myself for so many years and found this thing that brings me peace and calm and joy. And then poof, it was gone. And I was obviously grateful that I was able to work from home and be safe and be healthy. But at the same time, I had to fall back on other creative ways to just manage my mental health, and not kind of spiral. And from conversations I've had with lots of other, friends of survivors of trauma, they also went through a similar thing. And I think that's been tough on a lot of people around the world over the last 2 years.
Definitely. Yeah, it's been like the perfect storm of like, in a terrible way, a terrible perfect storm. But I totally, I hear you. And I think a lot of us have had, it's been an ongoing, for 2 years now, just a really hard and honestly, a shared trauma that we're all experiencing together in real time. And finding healthy ways to continue caring for ourselves and each other remains, like, I think the biggest priority.
Absolutely. Well, we want to close, Blythe, with a question that we ask all of our guests, and that is, what do you want your legacy to be?
Hmm. Um, this is something I've thought about over the last several years, and it's interesting how it changes, now being a parent. Um, how, Scott, to your point, like seeing the impact of something big has helped me realize the impact of the things that we overlook, the small things, and the actually, like, huge impact that we have on the immediate relationships in our lives. I think right now I would say I want my legacy to be that I was someone who lived a life of love, who had a generous spirit, and looked for ways to grow myself and the world around me.
I think you can check all those things off on your list because you've already been doing it in such a beautiful and profound way. And I'm just so grateful that you joined us on the podcast today to share your inspiring story. And more than that, that you took this creative style challenge, which was just meant to be something fun, and you turned it into something with so much impact and meaning that is empowering hundreds of thousands of people around the world to join you every year, and is touching the lives of millions of people. And I think that proves that we do all have the power to make a difference. And something that starts out as this small, fun idea can actually have a major impact. So thank you for being the change maker that you are, Blythe, and for putting your whole heart and soul into the Dressember movement.
Well, thank you for having me, and thanks for your kind words. I really appreciated our conversation.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another episode of the Trueheart podcast. And a special shout out to today's inspiring guest, Blythe Hill from the Dressember Foundation. We're in awe of her incredible work. And again, want to encourage everyone to just keep your eyes open and be aware. It can save a life. And thank you for having this conversation with us. It's a difficult topic to discuss, but it's a necessary one that we all need to be educated on so we can finally put an end to human trafficking in our lifetime.
Couldn't agree more. It's literally just be one of the lights, help us shine the light on this stuff so that it can't continue to live in the darkness that it does. And we can suss out these cockroach cowards, and expose them for what they are. And it's going to take all of us. We all just need to be aware and have the courage to just ask, hey, are you okay? Thanks again for watching the show. If you love the podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating and a good review. Of course, you can always find us on wherever podcasts are found and subscribe. You can also find us on YouTube if you'd like to watch the show, and subscribe there.
And stay tuned. Next week, we have a very important episode with Zachary Daranowski talking about mental health. You don't want to miss it. It's another conversation that we all need to be having now. So we're excited for you to check out that inspiring chat. Stay safe, have a great week, and we'll see you next time.